The day the Miller family came to the orphanage to choose a boy to adopt, all the kids gathered around, hoping to be picked. They dreamed of a different life, becoming the heir to a rich family. But I wasn't interested. I hid in a closet and fell asleep, thinking I could avoid the bad luck of being adopted by the Millers and having to marry Olivia, a girl who was known to be intense. I thought I could start a new life, free from the past. But when I woke up, Olivia was standing right in front of the closet. I thought I was still stuck in a nightmare. It wasn't until the orphanage manager, looking serious, called my name, "Tom, why are you sleeping in here?" that I realized it was all real. Seeing me frozen, the manager pulled me out of the closet. She straightened my shirt and pushed me toward Mr. and Mrs. Miller, saying, "He was asleep, and Miss Olivia asked us not to wake him. Everyone has been waiting for you." Olivia was standing with the Millers, a small smile on her face as she looked at me. She seemed different from the Olivia I remembered, the one who had always been cold to me. She greeted me saying, "Hello, Tom?" For some reason, hearing my name from her felt weird, unsettling. I frowned and looked away. I couldn't help but wonder, why had they waited for me? They could have picked anyone else. I asked, "Why are you waiting for me?" The manager bent down and explained, "They want to adopt you. You'll have a family now, with a mother, father, and a sister." Normally strict, the manager was smiling at me. I figured she was happy for me. After all, it was considered lucky for an orphan to be adopted. But the manager didn't know. I had been reborn. I already knew the Millers would come that day to adopt a boy, which was why I had hid in the closet. Mrs. Miller took my hand gently and said, "Tom, come home with us, okay? Olivia has always wanted a brother to protect her. Will you be her brother?" This scene was exactly the same as in my past life. Memories flashed through my mind. I quickly pulled my hand back and looked up at the manager, saying, "Manager, I don't want them to adopt me." The moment I said that, everyone was shocked. Olivia was the most surprised. She frowned and asked, "Why?" I replied bluntly, "Because I don't want to be your brother." Even though I had rejected her, there was no anger on Olivia's face. Instead, she spoke more gently, almost pleadingly. She said, then, "Not as my brother, but will you come live with us at the Miller house? Please." The manager tugged at my sleeve, but she couldn't stop me from rejecting Olivia again. I firmly refused. No. I thought Olivia would give up after that. But when the manager asked the Millers if they wanted to choose another boy, Olivia suddenly shouted, "Mom, I want him!" She added, "Only he looks the most like my brother." In my past life, Olivia chose me from among the many boys because I looked like her brother. At the time when I found out I had been selected, I thought, I must be really lucky. I was taken to the Miller family, renamed Tom Miller, and given my own room in their huge house. Even though that room didn't truly belong to me, I was happy. Mrs. Miller once said, "Children from orphanages can be a little rough. They don't know how to behave properly." So I changed my habits and began to become someone more refined, someone less like myself. Mrs. Miller was strict with me. I had to practice the piano for more than 12 hours every day. Even though the teacher said I had no talent for it, Mrs. Miller would still sit with me every day to practice. But some things can't be forced. I would apologize. "Sorry, Mom, I still can't play well." Every time I apologized, Mrs. Miller would smile patiently at me and comfort me. "It's okay, as long as Tom tries hard, you'll get better at it." Later, I learned that playing the piano was her deceased son's favorite hobby. Her treatment of me was just her way of seeing someone else in me, but I didn't mind. A fish dying of thirst doesn't care if the water it gets is clean, as long as it's water. Just like a mother is to me, having one is enough. I practiced harder, trying to make her happy. We grew closer, more like a real mother and son. Then, at Olivia's engagement party, Both she and I were drugged. When Mr. Miller saw us, he was so angry he fainted. Mrs. Miller slapped me across the face and said, "I shouldn't have brought you to the Miller family in the first place." Olivia stared at me with tears in her eyes, but I could see an emotion in them that I didn't understand. But I thought, maybe she regretted it. Regretted choosing me to be her brother. I said, "I really don't know what happened. I didn't drug my sister." I tried to explain myself, but no one believed me. Later, every time Olivia betrayed me, every time she hurt our marriage, she would say, "Back then, you drugged me just to make me marry you. Now this is your punishment." Olivia hated me. So, after we married, she would always slap my face in public, humiliating me. Many people in our social circle even started betting on how long our marriage would last. They'd say a year at most. Once the child is born, Olivia will leave him. But the outcome was unexpected. Olivia and I were tangled up for 19 years. Even after I died, my tombstone still read, "Beloved wife, Olivia." The manager asked, "Tom, tell me, why don't you want to be adopted by the Miller family?" After Olivia and her parents left, the manager called me into her office. I stayed quiet for a long time before offering a lame excuse. "I don't want to leave you and everyone." The manager sighed and tried to persuade me to think it over again. I knew she was only trying to help me, wanting me to have a better future, but I didn't want to go down that path again. I didn't want to be tied to Olivia anymore. However, that night, a fire changed all my plans. In the hospital, I looked at Olivia coldly and asked, "Did you start the fire?" Olivia quickly explained, "No. The fire was caused by old wiring. The fire department already confirmed it." Afterward, her lips curved downward slightly, and with a sad tone, she said, "Tom, why do you think of me like that?" In this life, I had only seen her 2 or 3 times, yet Olivia's attitude toward me felt strangely familiar. She stared at me, eyes full of hope, and said, "I just want to help you. If you agree to come home with me, my mother will pay the manager's medical bills." The orphanage had burned down the night before, and the manager had been severely injured while saving us. I scoffed, mocking her. This is the first time I've heard someone make threats sound so polite. Olivia didn't argue, only muttered, "Tom, it's okay if you don't want to be my brother anymore. As long as you come to our house, that's enough." Her tone, almost pleading, made me curious. I asked, "Why do you want me to go to the Miller family?" Olivia answered, "Because my mom has been really missing her brother lately, and you look so much like him. I just want you to go and keep her company." I was skeptical. Olivia was acting too strangely. The spoiled and willful young lady I once knew couldn't have said something like this. I asked, "Is that all?" Olivia hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That's all. I didn't want to be involved with Olivia again, but the manager was still in the hospital." On the way to the Miller family home, Olivia kept talking to me, but I stayed quiet. She probably knew she wasn't well liked, so she softened her tone and tried to justify herself. She said, "The Miller family can offer you a much better life. It's better than being in the orphanage, right? Tom, please don't be mad at me. I'm only doing this for your own good." She had said the same thing in my past life. Olivia hated me for most of my life, but toward the end, when I was near death, her attitude softened. But by then, it was too late. I was beyond help, and the only companion I had was my orange cat. One time, when Olivia came back to the house to see me, she got startled when the cat jumped out at her. She immediately threw it away, despite me having cared for the cat for months. Weakly, I asked, "Why?" She rolled her eyes and said, "You really have no heart. I'm doing this for you, aren't I? Keeping a cat isn't good for your health." I realized then that her so-called "for my own good" was just an excuse, a selfish pretext. It was another way for her to torment me. She always did that. Anything I liked, she hated. When I was happy, she'd make sure to ruin it. When we arrived at the Miller family mansion, I saw Mrs. Miller waiting at the entrance. Olivia had told her I was coming, so Mrs. Miller had already arranged a room for me on the second floor. She smiled gently at me and asked, "Tom, this will be your room from now on. Do you like it?" I froze for a moment, staring at the room I had once lived in. Then, I shook my head without emotion. I was no longer the Tom from my past life, the one who longed for family affection. So I said, "Mrs. Miller, this is your biological son's room, right? There's so much of his stuff here. You've kept it so well. I can tell you really cherish these things. If I stay in this room and accidentally damage something, I'm sure you'd be upset. I saw a guest room downstairs. I'll stay there." Mrs. Miller looked at me, wanting to say something, but Olivia interrupted her. "Mom," she said, "if Tom wants to stay downstairs, let the housekeeper tidy up the room for him." I looked at Olivia, who had spoken up for me. She probably didn't realize that the reason I didn't want to stay on the second floor was because her bedroom was right next to it. In my past life, before Olivia's engagement, we were actually close. Even in college, when Mrs. Miller asked me, "Tom, what kind of wife do you want to find?" I thought for a moment and was about to speak when Olivia draped her arm over mine, acting cute. "Of course, my brother likes someone like me, right?" I helplessly smiled and said, Okay, I'll find a girl just like my sister." That innocent joke would later become the testimony of me drugging my own sister. Every time I tried to explain, "I didn't drug you," Olivia would grab my arm and argue, "You always said you liked me. You liked me all these years, and in the end, you even drugged me to make me marry you. Why can't you admit it now?" Perhaps it was because I had returned to this house, but that night I dreamt of things from my past life. In the final days of my life, the doctor said to me, "It's not good for you to be alone all the time. Maybe you should call your family or friends to spend more time with you." I responded, "I don't have any family." As for friends, my best friend used to be Olivia's fiancé, named Ethan. It was only after 5 years of my marriage to Olivia that Ethan returned to the country. That night, Olivia hosted a reunion for him with many of her old friends. Someone deliberately recorded a video of the gathering and sent it to me. Ethan and Olivia were sitting in a corner, kissing passionately. It was just a few seconds of footage, but I watched it over and over again for the entire night. It was that night I made the decision to ask her for a divorce. She bit her lip and asked, "Why?" I showed her the video. I said, "Olivia, I know you married me out of necessity, but now that Ethan has returned, it seems he's still willing to accept you. Let's divorce and go our separate ways." Actually, before this, I had already proposed divorce to Olivia several times, but she had always refused. I thought that now, with Ethan back, she would finally agree. But Olivia still went into a frenzy, tearing up the divorce papers I had prepared, yelling hysterically at me, demanding that I be responsible for her for the rest of my life. At that moment, a voice came from behind. "Tom, brother, are you okay?" I suddenly woke up and, without thinking, slapped the person in front of me across the face. Olivia, looking like a young girl, stared at me, her eyes filled with grievance. She said, "I heard you talking in your sleep outside the door, and you sounded angry, so I came to check." After speaking, she covered her face and turned to leave. Before she reached the door, she looked back and said, "Mom asked you to have breakfast. You're going to be late for school." Just like in my past life. The Miller family had transferred me to Olivia's school. I saw her walk into the classroom with me. Someone asked her, "Olivia, who's this?" Olivia introduced me seriously. "This is Tom. He's currently staying with us." I suddenly remembered how, in my past life, before the incident with the drugging, when Olivia introduced me to people, she always looked happy and said, "This is my brother Tom." I looked at Olivia, who was only a step away from me, and suddenly realized she seemed different from the Olivia I remembered. She didn't resemble the innocent girl from my past life. nor the one who later tortured and sought revenge on me. My heart skipped a beat, and I suddenly had a thought. I called out, "Olivia!" Just as I was about to ask her about my suspicions, someone else also called her name. Olivia. Olivia glanced at me and then looked behind me. I turned around too. Standing at the door was Ethan. He said, "Olivia, wait for me after school. I need to talk to you." Only then did Ethan notice I was standing next to Olivia. His gaze toward me was far from friendly. He scanned me from head to toe and said, "You're the one staying with the Miller family?" After all, he was my best friend in my past life. The moment Ethan looked at me, I could feel his obvious hostility. It was completely different from the past. In my previous life, when Ethan found out I was Olivia's brother, he was thrilled, put his arm around my shoulder, called me Tom, and brought me into his circle. But now, his attitude was just like the last time I saw him in my previous life. That encounter had not gone well. I asked him, "The surveillance shows that the only people who went into Olivia's room that day were you and me. I didn't drug her, so it must have been you, right?" Back then, I couldn't understand it. He liked Olivia so much. Why would he destroy their engagement party? Later, as I sat at my desk, I noticed Ethan kept glancing over at me. Even though I felt uneasy, I forced myself to ignore him, turning my gaze back to the lesson and trying to focus. In my past life, I wasn't good at studying, but Mrs. Miller didn't mind my poor grades. It seemed that the worse I did, the happier she was. She would always say, "Tom is becoming more and more like Alex. He never liked studying either." A parent's love for their child is deep and far-reaching. But what mother would wish for her son to be a carefree playboy? In the end, she never truly saw me as her son. To her, I was probably just a comforting substitute for her real son. In this life, I refused to live like I did in my previous one, spending the first half of my life as a substitute for someone else's son, and the second half aimlessly wasting away. So studying became my only way out. But learning was not easy. Realizing that I couldn't understand any of the knowledge in the books, I felt a little defeated and stood up. Olivia, who had been chatting with her best friend, noticed my movement and turned to ask, "Where are you going?" I impatiently replied, "The bathroom." I remembered that the school's bathrooms were few and far between, and there was always a line between classes, but today, for some reason, no one was there. It wasn't until I opened the bathroom door that I sensed something was wrong. Several students turned their heads almost simultaneously and looked at me as I entered. The person closest to me was Ethan. He tossed aside the cigarette butt he had been holding, glanced at the boy they had pinned to the floor, covered in dirty water, and then walked over to me. He smiled and said, "Just messing around with him? You're not going to tell Olivia, are you?" Looking at the cigarette butt on the floor, I suddenly realized I had never truly understood Ethan. If I had, I would have known that he smoked while studying and bullied classmates. After thinking for a moment, I said, "I'm not that close with Olivia." "Really?" Ethan asked, his tone softening a little. "But don't you stay at her house?" I looked him in the eye and replied, "I stay at her house, but we're not close." Ethan nodded and said, "That's good." With that, he quickly led his group away. Once they had left, I glanced at the boy on the floor. I quickly looked away and entered a stall. When I came out, the boy was standing by the mop sink, his back to me. He had no shirt on and was trembling as he rinsed his shirt under the faucet. Perhaps hearing the door open, he quickly wrung out his shirt, put it on, and lowered his head, hurrying out. As he passed by me, I reached out and grabbed his arm. The boy looked up at me in confusion, and I met his gaze. We silently stared at each other for a long time before I remembered his name. Daniel. I took off my jacket and tossed it to him, saying, "Your shirt's wet, wear mine." Daniel lowered his head again and refused. "No need." I said, "It's not about how uncomfortable the wet shirt is. It's about not getting sick and missing out on your grades." My words made Daniel purse his lips, hesitating for a while before accepting my jacket. Seeing him put it on, I secretly breathed a relief. I wasn't someone who liked to meddle. In my past life, I had transferred to this school only to have Daniel commit suicide a few days later. The school explained it was due to family issues and academic pressure. But now, I began to suspect his reasons for ending his life were more complicated. Such a young life. "Thank you," Daniel said, once he changed into my jacket. The words, "no need to thank me," were on the tip of my tongue, but I swallowed them back. After a moment, I asked Daniel, "You must be good at studying, right?" I remembered Daniel was the top student in his grade before he jumped. He was taken aback for a second and nodded. "I'm okay." I glanced at the jacket on his back and said, "Daniel, I'll lend you my jacket if you help me with my studies." I gave him no chance to refuse and continued, "After the quiz, we'll switch seats. We'll sit together so you can help me study." Daniel hesitated for a long time before finally agreeing. After school, Olivia insisted on me riding with her. As soon as I got in the car, Ethan called out to her, "Olivia, can we talk?" I wasn't interested in their situation and didn't want to listen, but the atmosphere in the car was quiet, and Ethan's voice was loud and emotional. Their conversation drifted in the wind and reached my ears. Ethan asked Olivia, "Did you break up with me because of Tom?" "Olivia, we've been together for so long, and as soon as Tom shows up, you want to break up with me. I can't think of any other reason." Olivia shook her head and said slowly, "It has nothing to do with anyone." "Ethan, I just suddenly realized I don't have romantic feelings for you. I've always seen you as a brother." In that moment, I suddenly understood why Ethan had been paying so much attention to me today, even turning around to look at me in class. At dinner, Mrs. Miller suddenly said, "Tom, I've found you a piano teacher, starting tomorrow." Before she could finish, she was interrupted by Olivia. She said, "Mom, Tom doesn't like the piano. Don't force him to take up something he doesn't enjoy." Mrs. Miller awkwardly smiled, but didn't press the matter further. I looked up at Olivia, and my suspicion was further confirmed. In this life, I had never told Olivia that I disliked the piano. The only person who knew I didn't like it was the Olivia from my previous life. Back then, after she threw away my cat, my health deteriorated rapidly. Surprisingly, Olivia, who had never been close to me, came back to take care of me. It happened to be our 19th wedding anniversary. Olivia, who had always demanded gifts from me, unexpectedly bought me a piano as a present. But I had no interest in the piano, so I told her, "I've never liked playing the piano. I only learned because your mother wanted me to." Her mood flipped immediately, and she returned the piano on the same day in a fit of pique. Now, however, she seemed like a completely different person, so gentle and caring toward me. Mrs. Miller, still not giving up, asked Olivia, "How do you know Tom doesn't like the piano? Tom, do you want to learn the piano?" I quickly gathered my thoughts and politely refused. "Auntie, I need to study. I really don't have time to learn the piano." After dinner, I was about to go back to my room to rest when Olivia called out to me. "Tom, after tomorrow's quiz, we'll rearrange seats based on grades. Where would you like to sit?" When I didn't answer, she continued, "How about the 5th row by the window?" This was the same seat I always sat in during my past life. Olivia looked at me expectantly, her eyes full of hope. I gave her a long glance and casually said, "Anywhere?" My indifferent response seemed to please Olivia. The next day, however, she saw me walk past her and sit next to Daniel. "Tom," Olivia called out to me in front of everyone. She pouted, clearly unhappy, and asked, "Did you choose the wrong seat?" I replied, "Nope." Olivia stood there, looking at me with a hurt expression, and after a long pause, quietly sat down. I couldn't help but comment to Daniel, "Aren't you the first one to pick your seat? Why'd you choose this one?" Daniel had chosen a terrible seat in the middle of the first row. He said, "I'm nearsighted. If I sit too far away, I can't see the blackboard." He didn't usually wear glasses. Seeing my skeptical look, Daniel openly explained, "I don't have enough money, so I didn't get glasses." I pursed my lips and said, "Oh, I thought you chose this awful spot to leave it for me on purpose." Daniel looked up from his paper and honestly replied, "You're overthinking it." Regardless of whether I was overthinking or not, after school, I took Daniel to the optician outside the school and forcibly got him a pair of glasses. I joked, "You can't see the blackboard, and if your grades slip, who will help me study? This is your tutoring fee," I added. After all, I was using the Miller family's money. They owed me a lot, so what was a little more money spent? I hadn't expected Daniel to cry. He hadn't shed a tear when Ethan and his group beat him up. But when I handed him the glasses, he was in tears. He choked up and said, "Tom, when I have money, I'll definitely repay you." I managed to calm him down, but on our way back to class, Olivia stopped me in the stairwell. She confronted me. "Why didn't you pick the seat we agreed on?" I impatiently asked, "Who said we agreed on anything? Olivia, did I promise you anything?" Olivia fell silent. She looked at me for a long time, and then with a pitiful tone she said, "Tom, why has everything changed? Are you also—" I smiled back at her and asked, "Also what?" Unfortunately, Olivia didn't answer, but word of her search for me reached Ethan. After class, Ethan came to find me personally, warning me, "Stay away from Olivia." Daniel, concerned, also advised me, "Tom, you should stay away from Olivia. Try not to interact with her." To persuade me, he even mentioned how Ethan had bullied him before. He said, "Olivia only asked me one question, and Ethan accused me of having bad intentions toward his girlfriend. Tom, Ethan's not someone you want to mess with. I'm worried he'll cause trouble for you." I would have preferred to stay far away from Olivia, but she was like a clingy spirit, always appearing unexpectedly at my side. I sighed quietly. I put down my exercises and patted Daniel's worried shoulder, reassuring him, "Don't worry." However, Daniel's worries quickly came true. Ethan cornered me in the hallway, asking, "Can we talk?" I was about to refuse, but when I saw the unmasked hatred in his eyes, I suddenly changed my mind. I replied, "All right." Ethan's attitude toward me this life was so different that sometimes I even wondered if he, like Olivia and I, had also been reincarnated. I took 2 steps toward him, smiling as I asked, "What do you want to talk about?" Ethan said nothing. As the noise in the stairwell grew louder, he tilted his head, and with a sneer in his voice, he said, "Nothing. If you weren't fostered in the Miller family, you wouldn't even have the right to talk to me." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly fell backward down the stairs. Olivia, who was coming upstairs, happened to witness him tumbling down. Ethan looked heartbroken as he said, "Tom, why can't we just talk? Why did you hit me?" I was speechless. What was going on here? His words drew angry glares from the students around who didn't know what had happened. Olivia bit her lip, saying nothing, but gazed at me with a conflicted look as I stood in the hallway. After a while, several of Ethan's lackeys helped him up and took him to the hospital. As they left, Ethan sighed dramatically. "Olivia, I think my leg is ruined. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to run again." Olivia looked down at his leg, worried, and softly tried to comfort him before sending him off. Once everyone had dispersed, Olivia walked up to me. She looked up at me with a stern expression and said, "Tom, go apologize to Ethan." I laughed and said, "He fell by himself. Why should I apologize?" Olivia sighed deeply and said, "Ethan is an athlete. Are you saying he's using his own legs and his future to frame you? Tom, I know you hate Ethan, but that's all." She suddenly realized something and stopped mid-sentence. I sneered and asked, "All what?" "Olivia, I just transferred here. I don't have any conflicts with Ethan. Can you explain why I would hate him?" Olivia bit her lip, staring at me. The more she tried to hide the truth about her reincarnation, the more I wanted to expose it. I spoke slowly and deliberately. "Because you know I, like you, have been reincarnated, right? You know how much Ethan hurt me in my past life. You think I have a blood feud with him, so I'm getting revenge, right?" I thought by now she couldn't possibly pretend anymore. But Olivia hesitated, her lips trembling, and in the end, she still denied it. She said, "What are you talking about? I don't understand. But if you've done something wrong, you should apologize. Go apologize to Ethan, okay?" I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. I looked into her eyes and smiled. "Olivia, you're still the same, even in this new life. You're still so timid." Olivia had always been pampered by the Miller family, and beneath her spoiled attitude, there was nothing but a fearful heart. She always blamed others for her mistakes. In her world, she was always right, and everyone else had to be the one to apologize first. So she couldn't face the mistakes she made in her past life, nor could she admit that she had been reincarnated. My words made Olivia's pupils tremble, and her eyes reddened. But soon she turned her face away, unable to look me in the eye. Her voice was choked as she said, "I'm going to check on Ethan." Afterward, she quickly turned and walked away. I wasn't sure if she was really worried about Ethan or if she just wanted to escape from me. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook. I quickly caught up with her, grinning. "Didn't you think I hit him? Well, I'll go check on him too." Let's see if he's really hurt, and think about whether it was me who attacked him. When Olivia and I arrived at the hospital, Ethan already had his leg casted. He was lying in bed, and as soon as he saw Olivia, he forced a bitter smile, saying weakly, "Olivia, the doctor says my leg is seriously injured. I might never be able to run again." When he saw me following behind Olivia into the room, he turned to face me with a questioning look. "Tom, what did I ever do to you? Why did you hit me? Do you know that I'm an athlete? If I lose the use of my leg, my life is over." I listened to his outburst, impassively before asking with a smile, "Ethan, are you sure I'm the one who caused you to fall down the stairs?" Ethan, enraged, gritted his teeth and retorted, "At that time, it was just the two of us. Who else could it have been?" "I'll tell you, Tom, I was the long-distance champion in the city. If something happens to my leg, are you going to pay for it? If you don't apologize, get ready to be expelled from school." Olivia, looking sympathetic, turned to me and said, "Tom, please apologize to Ethan." I ignored her and kept my gaze fixed on Ethan, continuing, "Do you really think there are no cameras in the stairwell? You can slander me just because there's no direct footage of what happened. Ethan, I suggest you look again. There might be surveillance in the nearby area that you didn't notice." Ethan's face stiffened for a moment. I saw that small change in his expression. Ethan hadn't been reincarnated. If he had, he would know that the surveillance in the opposite building could capture what happened in the stairwell. I felt a bit disappointed. I was about to leave when Olivia, who had planned to follow me, was called by Ethan. "Olivia, my leg really hurts. Will you stay with me for a while?" Olivia glanced at Ethan, then turned to me. "Tom, can you wait for me outside?" Of course I wasn't going to wait for her. Without a word, I walked out of the hospital. "Tom." Just as I returned to school, Daniel rushed up to me, out of breath, and handed me a USB drive. "What's this?" I asked. Daniel, panting heavily, said, "I heard about what happened with Ethan. There's no camera footage of the incident in the hallway, but I managed to find a camera in the opposite building that caught what happened. Ethan's dad is a shareholder in the school. I was worried they'd delete the footage, so I went to the surveillance room and secretly copied it. I felt a rush of warmth in my chest. I smiled at him and said, "Daniel, I can't thank you enough. You're really a brother to me. I almost want to bow to you in gratitude." Daniel pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose. Despite his efforts to hide it, I noticed the corner of his mouth twitching, as if he couldn't suppress a smile. He feigned indifference and said, "Just go back to class. The midterms are coming up. You should focus on your studies." Unfortunately, the footage that Daniel worked so hard to copy wasn't needed in the end. That evening, as Ethan was sneaking around the school looking for the surveillance footage, Olivia and I caught him red-handed. Before I could speak, Olivia walked up to him and asked, "Why are you here alone tonight?" Ethan stumbled over his words, unable to come up with a reasonable excuse. I couldn't stand the awkward silence, so I spoke up and said, "What's there to be confused about? Criminals often return to the scene of the crime. He's obviously worried, so he came back to look for the cameras." I pointed across to the opposite building and added, "The cameras you're looking for are over there. They cover this area. But I don't think you'll have time to delete them now, because I've already copied the footage. Ethan, I'll ask you again. Did I cause you to fall down the stairs?" Ethan gritted his teeth, and when he looked at Olivia, he saw her staring at his casted leg. Olivia asked, "How come you're still running around the school with a cast on your leg?" Ethan was visibly flustered. He fumbled with his words, and eventually he had no choice but to admit, "Olivia, I'm sorry. I was just confused at the time, and I mistakenly thought Tom pushed me. In reality, I wasn't paying attention and tripped on my own." Olivia, with a cold expression, shoved him aside and walked away without saying another word. The next day, under my pressure, Ethan publicly admitted in front of the whole class that it was his own fault he fell. In the second semester of our sophomore year, Daniel and I applied to live in the school dorms. Daniel's decision was prompted by his uncle moving out of town, and he didn't feel comfortable living alone. As for me, I'd had enough of the fake relationships in the Miller family. In this life, my connection with the Miller couple wasn't deep. They asked a few questions but didn't put up any resistance to my decision. The only one who objected strongly was Olivia. "Why do you have to live in the dorms?" she asked. While packing my things, I responded impatiently, "It's more convenient, and I can focus on studying better." Olivia didn't press further, and the room fell silent for a long while. Just when I thought she had left, I heard her voice, trembling and choked with emotion. "You're doing this because you want to get away from me, aren't you?" "Tom, I really thought we could start over." "But you won't forgive me. You're still angry with me." I turned to look at her, her eyes shimmering with tears. I smiled faintly and asked, "Why would I be angry with you? Olivia, you're acting strange. First you say I hate Ethan, and now you're saying I hate you." Olivia stared at me for a long moment. Slowly she closed her eyes, then opened them again, letting her tears fall freely. She bit her lip and said, "So you really do hate me." "Tom, can't you just forget about the past? Can't we start over?" I narrowed my eyes at her, mocking. Done pretending, are we? But Olivia acted as though she didn't see the obvious disdain in my eyes. She continued, speaking as if to herself, "Tom, heaven has given us another chance. Can't we forget about our past lives and start fresh?" Olivia truly was foolish to the core. Suppressing the anger welling up inside me, I sneered, "Olivia, I can't tell if you're stupid or just shameless. In our past life, I was the victim. I died a miserable death. If we're being playful about it, you're the debtor, and I'm the one owed. Now you're saying we should just forget everything, that I shouldn't collect, and you shouldn't pay back? Are you joking? Forgetting is easy for you, but not paying suits you even better. Why should I forget? Am I an idiot?" But Olivia still wouldn't give up. Through her tears, she said, "Tom, I'll use this life to make up for what you lost in the last one, okay? Before we got engaged in the last life, you told me you'd found a home of your own, and you were happy. If you let go, you could feel that way again. You could be best friends with Ethan. We wouldn't be siblings anymore, and Mom and Dad wouldn't stop us from being together. After we graduate college, I'll marry you. Mom and Dad will treat you like their own son, and we can live a happy life together. Tom, you can still have a home. Our home. Let's start over, okay?" I stared at her coldly and said, "No, I will never be friends with Ethan in this life, and I will never marry you. Olivia, when will you stop being so ridiculous? Stop being so foolish, will you?" Olivia bit her lip and retorted, "I'm not being ridiculous. Tom, there's nothing impossible." Her eyes gleamed with a kind of madness. Olivia sometimes had the obsessive tendencies of a true lunatic. Not long after, Ethan also moved into the dorms. Strangely enough, he was placed in the same room as Daniel and me. He tried multiple times to befriend us, but Daniel and I ignored him each time. Then, the day before the final exams, Ethan suddenly barged into our dorm room, reeking of alcohol. "What do you guys want from me? How can I make you forgive me? Just tell me straight," he slurred. "I've apologized, given gifts, said everything I could think of, and every day you still glare at me with those sour faces. Who do you think you're impressing? I've never been humiliated like this before. If it weren't for Olivia going to my dad and forcing me to be friends with you, I wouldn't put up with this crap. My dad's been telling me since I was a kid to please the Miller family, to please Olivia so she'd like me and marry me one day. I've been a simp for years, and then you showed up and ruined everything. Why?" Daniel and I exchanged glances, watching Ethan slump drunkenly onto the floor. I motioned for Daniel to leave with me, and as we walked out, he asked, "Do you think I'm being too harsh?" He apologized. I waved my hand dismissively. "Don't think like that. You're the victim, he's the perpetrator. He can apologize, and you can choose not to accept it. If perpetrators could erase their crimes with a few simple words, they'd only become bolder in their wrongdoing. If that happened, justice would cease to exist. In my opinion, Daniel was already too kind. He even took the time to carry Ethan back to his bed before leaving. But after that night, Ethan's behavior only grew stranger. He started clinging to us relentlessly. He requested a seat change so he could sit directly behind me in class. Oh, Ethan created the illusion that we were close friends, telling anyone who would listen, "I've decided I want to study hard and get into the same university as Tom and Daniel." He frequently asked me to help him with his studies, pleading, "Tom, won't you teach me?" His tone was eerily familiar, reminding me of our past life. Back then, we had been the best of friends, and Ethan had used the same tone whenever he wanted me to do him a favor. One day Daniel pulled me aside and whispered, "Do you think Ethan has really changed?" I looked over at Ethan, who was walking toward us, and let out a cold laugh. "Maybe, but I still don't believe people change their nature overnight. No one suddenly becomes bad, and no one suddenly becomes good. Life continued this way until the college entrance exams were over. Just as Olivia had said, she was genuinely trying to make up for what she owed me in our past life. Piece by piece, she was working to restore the things I had lost. Through her persistent efforts, my relationship with Ethan improved slightly. The Miller couple also began treating me better. After the exams, they even brought me back to the Miller family home, saying they wanted to throw me an 18th birthday party. Ethan found out about it when he came to visit. He eagerly volunteered, "I want to help with Tom's birthday party too." Olivia nodded happily. "Of course, you're Tom's best friend. He'll definitely be glad if you help." She then turned to me and said softly, "Tom, you and Ethan are really getting along so well now. See, nothing is impossible." I knew exactly what she meant, but I merely smiled without arguing. On the day of my birthday, Olivia gave me a watch worth over 3 million yuan. I didn't refuse it and accepted it graciously. After all, my relationship with the Miller family would only last until I turned 18. Once I left, I'd need plenty of money to get by. If they were willing to give, I had no reason not to take it. The Miller family was well connected in North City. Even for my birthday, many prominent figures attended. Some classmates also showed up. Ethan had invited them. The only person I invited was Daniel. The grandeur of the party felt overwhelming, leaving both Daniel and me feeling out of place. We slipped out to the backyard to escape the crowd. "What are your plans for the summer?" I asked. Daniel took a big gulp of soda and replied softly, "I'm planning to get a summer job. I need to save enough for my first year's expenses." I glanced at the expensive watch on my wrist and suggested that he let me join him. Before I could finish speaking, a sharp scream pierced through the air from inside the villa. When Daniel and I rushed to the second floor, Olivia and Ethan were already dressed, but the suggestive marks on their bodies and the disheveled state of the bedroom made it clear what had just transpired. In front of all the guests, Mr. Miller slapped Olivia across the face. "How could you do something like this? Don't you have any shame?" Ethan stepped in front of Olivia, shielding her. "If you're going to hit someone, hit me. It's all my fault." The Miller household descended into chaos. Olivia tried to approach me to explain, but Ethan's parents stopped her. "Olivia, this is all our son's fault, but what's done is done." The party ended early, with guests leaving by 10 p.m., judging by the cordial smiles and polite words exchanged as they departed. It seemed the Miller and Ethan families had already reached an agreement on how to handle the situation. As I passed by the study on my way to bed, I overheard Mr. Miller telling Mrs. Miller, "Let's arrange their engagement in a couple of days. Start preparing for the engagement banquet." Late that night, Olivia knocked on my bedroom door. I pretended not to hear. The next morning, as I was about to leave with Daniel to look for summer jobs, Olivia intercepted me. She tried to explain, "I don't know what happened yesterday. We were drugged." I looked at her with a mocking smile and asked, "Oh, drugged by someone else or by yourself?" Pain flickered in Olivia's eyes. "Why would I drug myself?" she asked. I replied in a scornful tone, "Why not? Olivia, in our past life, didn't you drug yourself and then blame me for it?" In our previous life, I had always believed it was Ethan who had drugged Olivia. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that Olivia confessed the truth to me. She had said, "Tom, what else could I do? I loved you. I fell in love with my own brother. I thought if I did that, Mom and Dad would agree to let me marry you, but I didn't expect Dad to die from the shock. Tom, if it weren't for my feelings for you, I wouldn't have caused Dad's death, or spent my whole life burdened by guilt, too ashamed to even face my own mother. Tom, you were at fault too, so you deserve to stay in hell with me." As she spoke, she suddenly embraced me, saying, "Tom, don't leave me." "I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please don't leave me like this." In our past life, Olivia deceived everyone, including herself. She even managed to shift the blame for her actions onto me to soothe her own guilt. She had always been a coward, clinging to self-deception, whether in our past life or this one. Now she choked out an apology. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did to you in our past life, Tom. I truly know I was wrong. Please forgive me, won't you? But this time I really wasn't the one who drugged us. Please believe me." She reached out, trying to grab my hand, but I pushed her away. As I turned to leave, I heard her say behind me, "Tom, I'll break off the engagement with Ethan. Will you wait for me?" I left without looking back. As college approached, Daniel came to the Miller residence to help me pack. The Miller couple had reverted to their usual cold demeanor. When I mentioned I was moving out, they reacted indifferently, offering a few polite remarks, but little else. Everything was going smoothly until Olivia returned home unexpectedly. She blocked my way and asked, "Did Mom and Dad really agree to you moving out?" When I nodded, disbelief flashed across her face. "How is that possible? They've always said they liked you and treated you like their own son. Let me go ask them." While she went inside, Daniel and I left with my things. As we exited the neighborhood, we ran into Ethan. Unlike before, Ethan didn't greet us or try to curry favor. He looked like he wanted to ignore us entirely, but then stopped and turned back, calling out to me. "Tom, you didn't seriously think I wanted to be your friend, did you?" He sneered. "To be honest, if it weren't for Olivia's request, I wouldn't even waste a glance on someone like you." It seemed that his engagement to Olivia had emboldened him, allowing him to reveal his true colors. He smirked and continued, "By the way, it was me who drugged Olivia at your birthday party." I looked at him, feeling nothing but disgust. He and Olivia truly deserved each other. Their methods were equally vile. Ethan carried on smugly. "I'll marry her, make her my wife. The Miller family only has one daughter. In the end, everything will be mine anyway. Honestly, I don't even like Olivia that much, but my parents are desperate for this marriage. It's all about the benefits, you know?" Ethan boasted about the advantages of marrying Olivia, but I remained expressionless. No one knew better than I did how miserable life with Olivia could be. Still, I thought to myself, let the wicked deal with each other. It was fitting. After parting ways with Ethan, Daniel sighed and said, "Tom, you were right. No one suddenly becomes bad, and no one suddenly becomes good." He added, "Thankfully, we didn't fall for any of it." 4 years later, after graduating from college, Daniel and I decided not to pursue further studies. Instead, we started a business together. The expensive watch Olivia had given me became our startup capital. With a bit of luck and memories from my past life, our company quickly gained traction, thriving under our management. The next time I saw Olivia was at a bidding event. Over the years, I had heard bits and pieces about her and Ethan. They had divorced not long after their marriage. At first, Ethan refused to agree to the divorce and even resorted to violence. But when Mr. Miller found out, he brought up past grievances and used every means at his disposal to send Ethan to prison. Only then did their miserable union come to an end. After the bidding event, Olivia caught up with me in the parking lot. She seemed nervous and hesitant. After a long pause, she finally said, "I'm sorry, Tom." I glanced at her and replied coldly, "If you're truly sorry, then withdraw from the bidding." Olivia hesitated for a moment before surprisingly agreeing, "All right." Even so, I didn't believe her. In business, there's no such thing as trust, especially between people like us. Later, I called Daniel to update him on the bidding results. Daniel sighed and said, "The Miller family's involved? Does that mean we don't stand a chance?" "Not necessarily," I replied confidently. "If the Miller family has sunk so low that they're competing with a startup like ours, it just shows how desperate they are. Trust me, this one's in the bag." Daniel exhaled in relief, saying, "If you're confident, then I feel better." A few days later, the results came in as expected. We won the bid. I turned to leave, planning to call Daniel with the good news, but when I glanced back, I saw Olivia standing not far behind me. The sunlight streaming through the glass illuminated me, while Olivia remained shrouded in the shadow of the wall. She forced a faint smile and said, "Congratulations." My smile faded slightly, and a sense of annoyance crept over me. Of all days, why did I have to run into her today? Olivia didn't seem to notice my irritation. She continued softly, "I did what you asked. I withdrew from the bid." Frowning, I asked impatiently, "What, are you here to ask for a favor in return?" She shook her head, her voice trembling. "No, Tom, I just wanted to see you, to talk to you. I wanted to tell you that whatever you want me to do, I'll do it." I studied her for a moment and asked, "Anything?" She nodded. "Yes, anything you say." I smiled coldly and said, "All right. Then do me a favor and don't show up in front of me ever again. Can you do that?" With that, I turned and walked away. After a few steps, I couldn't resist glancing back. Olivia was leaning pale-faced against the wall, swallowing several pills. When she noticed my gaze, she gave me a weak smile and quickly hid the pills behind her back. Her eyes lit up as though she had found hope. There was no need for her to hide. I couldn't care less if she was sick or what kind of medication she took. I spoke my true thoughts calmly. "To be honest, Olivia, I'd rather tell you to die, but I know you'd never agree. So just stay out of my sight. That way I can pretend you're already dead." I didn't linger. As I left, I caught her reflection in the glass. A broken figure crouched on the ground, sobbing into her hands. She looked like nothing more than a crumpled mess of filth. While discussing a project with Daniel, he casually brought up the Miller family. It was then I realized I hadn't seen Olivia in a long time. It was as though she had truly disappeared. The last I'd heard of her was a year ago. A business partner had mentioned she was ill. They say depression is terrifying. That Miller girl is a wreck now. She was fine before, but suddenly she fell apart. Stays locked up in her house all day, won't see anyone. Mrs. Miller even hired a priest to perform rituals, like she was possessed or something. Can't handle light, can't handle people. The slightest thing sets her off. "Tom." Daniel's voice snapped me out of my thoughts as he patted my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" I shook my head with a smile and returned to the discussion. Whatever happened to Olivia was none of my concern. I only knew that I was doing well. I had friends, a thriving career. That was enough. In this life, I had achieved everything I had wanted in the last. Sometimes I couldn't help but feel that fate had truly favored me this time.